before we move on to the security issues that we have to deal with. Now, in law, we say IT, intellectual property expert, when it comes to issues of patents, shares a view with me and says that we will not, we don't need a license from the patent holders when it comes to the vaccines that we are talking about. We don't need a license from the patent holders. The patents are not registered in Ghana and as such have no legal effect here in Ghana. Thank you so very much. Sarah Anko is a very reputable IT expert and sharing that with us. Thank you so very much. So in this country, we have literally all the knowledge that we can rely on to do the things that we require as far as these things are concerned. This show, as always, is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and as close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. DBS Industries, anything roofing. As far as you're looking for quality, that's where to go. Robert & Sons, seeing is believing. Waylead, home is where you start from. Star Assurance, that's your solid partner. First Code Management Services. Industry, get it right. The new school, knowledge, compassion, and leadership. Now, let's begin with the issue of the broad day, brazen criminal activity that has gotten attention a lot more because police officers are also now being killed. Let's quickly listen to the IGP, watch this, and then listen to the IGP on the Adedimpo murder investigations and IGP on the general situation of crime in the country.
As I indicated, you know, when crimes are committed, you have procedure that you go through. You activate your informants and you take the necessary steps. Apart from intensifying your patrols and making sure that it doesn't occur again, you start your investigative processes, which we have already put in motion. I had instructed the Commissioner CID to take over the case because of the importance we attach to it. So he has started, and I'm sure, as I indicated, we will definitely get them. We will get them. Every society has its own issues, has its own crimes. Whoever says that we are out of touch with the system or with the society is not studying the topography of the West African sub-region as of now. Anybody or any security analysis worth the salt will know that the West African sub-region is currently experiencing a high wave of crime in all the countries. If you compare all the countries, there's a high wave of crime. It doesn't mean that we should fold our arms and say that we'll not do anything. Yes, we are investigating, as I indicated, and that is part of the investigation as to why an officer on duty was not wearing a bulletproof vest. We are actually doing what we can to protect the people of Ghana. There's no society in the world where there's no crime. Even in the US, in the UK, Sweden, and all those countries where I would say they more or less have everything, they still have crime. The only place that doesn't have crime is heaven, and we are not in heaven. So if any so-called security analysis says that we are not on top of our game, that's why this is not happening. I mean, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right. So you have just been listening to the IGP, and now let's try and run you through a bit of the little history of what has happened in the course of the period of the year so far, and why some would say we are in a state of insecurity. So, armed robbers shot and killed a police officer and a 40-year-old mother of 3 in a Bullion van robbery. That's what we are referring to. That is what has brought all the attention here. But in January, armed robbers shot dead a young policeman escorting a Bullion van, bolted with the monies in the Bullion van. So this is not the first, right? This is not the first. In January, this happened. and a policeman was shot and killed. Again in January, armed men besieged a church in Oyibi, shot at the head pastor, and stabbed a worshipper. In February, armed robbers attacked and then snatched Asokore Mampong MCE Alidu Seidu's official vehicle at gunpoint. So the MCE is the head of the security for that particular area, and they don't care. Indiscriminately, they pick anybody at all. In March, a Bullion van was attacked at Bachona, Spintex, in a daylight operation by some unknown armed men. That's in March. The driver of the van escaped while the police officer was disarmed and assaulted with a mallet. That was in March. Okay, so we're sharing some more with you. In April, robbers shot and killed a couple returning from the bank in Sekendi, Takrade. We are showing you these brazen attacks. Then in May, a census trainer was shot dead in Cape Coast while returning from a census training. A head teacher was killed on the Atebubu Kwame Danso Highway in a suspected robbery attack in the Bruno region. In June this month, the Gimpa Fiesta Royal Road robbery. I'm sure you have all become accustomed to that, become aware of that. They are actually there, and they have been disturbing a lot of people. A forex bureau close to the police headquarters in Osu was raided by armed men, and this shocked a lot of people. Very close to the police headquarters, just a stone throw away from the police headquarters. Then armed robbers fired at a victim at Pig Farm and made away with his backpack. So was it Thursday or just yesterday, there was another Bullion van attack, as you may have heard. Now, Dr. Baumia, in 2019, when these matters, were getting troubling, made a promise. He, together with the Interior Minister, Ambrose Derry, they said on-duty police officers are going to bear weapons, bulletproof, and other protective gear. Bulletproof and other protective gear will be given to all the officers on duty. He indicated this at a burial ceremony of a police officer, Muhammad Awal, who was killed in the line of duty at Ibuakwa. The president now tells us that there's no insecurity in Ghana per statistics for the first quarter of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021. In the first quarter, the president refers to the facts, and those are facts that the statistics show. Issues of robberies, you had 520. And then in 2021, in the first quarter, you have 491. So 520 in the first quarter in 2020, as against 491 in 2021. And that is the basis for what the president said just a while ago when he was receiving the award or being decorated with a doctorate degree at the University of, was it Cape Coast or Winneba then? Yeah. Now, I just mentioned to you that unknown assailants shot at a Bullion van at the Ochireko and Dominasi portion of the Winneba-Accra stretch. The crew involved a driver and 2 policemen on board with an amount of 550,000. Fortunately for them, they escaped. The gunshots and were rescued by the Winneba Divisional Police, who escorted them back to Accra. And this happened on the 17th of this month. let me go to the phone lines now and begin this conversation with Police Public Affairs Director Sheila Kessie Abeye Bachman. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsfile.
Senior, thank you too, and congratulations. I wish I had joined you in the studio, but I had to be in the Upper East region for duty. And your producers also contacted me just this morning. It's tight, but I still had to make time to join so that I can let Ghanaians know what we are doing for them to feel assured.
Right.
So you have listed a number of cases. Investigations are progressing in several of them, the cases that you have listed. In fact, in most of them, arrests have been made and the suspects have been connected to the crime according to the evidence that investigations have been able to get. And some are even facing prosecutions. And this is across the country because the cases you listed show across the country. So let us be assured. Now, as we heard in the clip that you played, as the IGP said, the topography of crime within the sub-region give credence to the fact that massive work is being done by the police in Ghana and the security agencies in Ghana. And that is how and why the people of Ghana and the communities in Ghana are safe. It is a bigger picture. It's like a puzzle, or let me even attribute it to the human body. When one finger gets hit, yes, it affects the body, but still the body must be taken care of while necessary efforts are taken to cure that finger. So in essence, several preventive measures are taken around the clock and across the country to prevent the incidences of crime. But when crimes like the ones that you have listed occur, we see it as a breach. It's a breach of some of our security strategies. And therefore, extra attention is paid to those breaches in order to arrest the perpetrators so that they are not able to occasion breaches again. But also to keep the larger picture intact, the greater security to prevent the incidences from happening and across the country. In fact, a lot is being done, and the police need the support of all of you, viewers, listeners, and the panelists in the studio to carry out our constitutional mandate.
Yeah.
In the last few days, as you said, and then related it to the Bullion van incident and some incidences in the course of the year, people have used the word insecurity, because of the privilege of having the media space. And that is causing more fear and panic. It is not the reality. The use of the word must be looked at. See, I told you that I was in Bulga. So I am descending to the south. Right now, I am in Ashanti region. Since Wednesday, I have been in Bulga. I spent 2 nights in the Upper East region, and I have been descending. And now I am in the Ashanti region. Hopefully tomorrow, I'll be in Accra. If you move beyond your bounds to the entire country, you can tell the greater, you can tell you can see the bigger picture and tell the story as accurately as it is, so that people will continue to support the police. People will see that the bigger picture of preventing crime is what is happening, and then together we can all forge ahead. Now, another advice. So people have the privilege of the media space, and then they make all sorts of allegations and claims in the media space, causing unnecessary fear and panic. Please, perhaps I should also use this to appeal, particularly to those who have the privilege of the media space, that if you have all this information you claim to have, and you do not let the police know, so that we can arrest the situation, but you go ahead making all those claims, what will be your agenda or what will be the motive? So please, fellow Ghanaians, this is not something that we should just be using the word insecurity. But when you look at the bigger picture, police is at work We are preventing incidences of crime from happening. Let us be assured that the breaches that have been occasioned, we are working hard enough to arrest the perpetrators and bring them to book.
All right. Well, the reality of members of the public is far different from the picture you paint this morning, because as they continue to hear the reports, which are the real things that are happening, facts of the situations that are happening, they are unable to reconcile that with the assertions that there is no insecurity. So if you can help, at what point can they say or suggest that they are living in fear because there is insecurity?
There are breaches, for which reason we have re-strategized to ensure that the perpetrators will be arrested. Because for as long as the criminals are in the society, we cannot rest, because they will continue to perpetrate crime. But for the greater majority of whatever is happening, preventive measures are taken to stop the incidences from happening while we still work to arrest the criminal. So let us not play into the agenda of the criminal, because if we do not support and then we continue to play into the agenda of the criminals, which is actually to cause fear, so that there will be mistrust in the system, then what you do is to demoralize your security system and the structures, and then you lose focus.
Right.
So
the
picture. The reports.
Right.
Reports are from several incidences that happen, and then as journalists or as media practitioners, we pick and choose what to tell the people. So let's give the bigger picture. As we admit that there have been security breaches and we work hard to arrest them, let us also admit that there are a lot that are being done to ensure that people are safe. That is why you and I
so for example,
able to go about our daily duties.
Yeah.
You're able to wake up, go to work, come back home. Yes, knowing that there is a criminal out there whom the police are working hard together with the security apparatus to arrest. But be assured, remain calm, and give any information you can give to the security services.
Right. So in 2019, this is people's reality. In 2019, a policeman is killed in what people found to be a very needless situation. Then the interior minister, the vice president, all make a promise that police people will get bulletproof vests and they will have the necessary, gear to go out and do their work. And they assured that this was going to happen immediately. We are in 2021, and a police officer is killed in a manner that some experts say is quite preventable, it's needless, because he was not protected.
You're right. It is preventable, and that is why the Inspector General of Police said that even the reason why the police officer was not in a bulletproof vest will be looked at. So we have some resources. We work with the resources we have. Like I said, when breaches occur, we re-strategize. So new instructions are given. As part of the investigation, you don't only work on the criminal aspect, but you look at the lapses in it, even for your own operations, and you resolve them. So for the resources that are given to the police, they are used for the purposes for which they are given. Talking about bulletproof jackets, there are no bulletproof jackets for the almost 40,000 police officers. In fact, yesterday, 2,000 police officers passed out, and so now we are increasing in numbers, and then hopefully Ghanaians will see the visibility they continue to urge us on to have. So the 40,000 plus police officers, not every one of us can wear bulletproof for every duty. In fact, the rules of wearing the fragmentation jackets, it also comes with its own nuances, but that is our internal issue. But for the resources that are available, they are distributed for the work that must be done. You wouldn't like to see
I saw you. I saw you. Sorry, I saw you with the IGP when he went to commiserate with the family, and he was saying that you have a couple of these fragmentation jackets. Is that what you call them? Bulletproofs?
Yes. Yes. Because the reason it is fragmentation jackets, when you say so, they are bulletproof jackets, but it's not as though the bullet will not go in, but it tries to dispel it somehow. So
okay.
It's good to use fragmentation jackets.
Right. So he said you have a couple. That's the word he used, a couple.
Exactly.
That's not good enough.
A couple in this sense means that we have a number and we use them as much as we can use them. And we are actually hopeful. We know the reporting channels that we have to report incidents. So, for instance, when your child has to pay school fees, and, for instance, you are still getting the school fees for the child will not go to the media space to tell the journalist that my father is still getting me my school fees. The child will go to the father. And so we know that efforts are being made. For us as the police service, whatever resources we have, we are using it. But something, look at this. So if you saw every police officer wear the bulletproof jacket and the helmet, what will you say? The best practices does not indicate that every police officer must at every time wear these things, because it also impacts on the people to whom we are giving protection. So we are doing the right thing, and we continue to review them. We also consider the feedback that we get from the public through the media, and we look at the best practices so that our police service will not only be a good police service for Ghana, but internationally recognized. And then you can stay proud everywhere and say that I trust my police service. And that is exactly what we are doing. All we need is for you to paint the picture right, so that those that are not so right, they can be made right. And those that are right, let our citizenry hear about them so they can give the necessary support. So be assured, all the work that must be done to get these criminals arrested is being done. Even if they need external support, we are requesting for them and we are getting them as and when they come in. And all the work that will have to be done are being done. I have told you that it's a bigger picture. It is not just like losing focus and attending to just one issue so that the other issues will remain. We are working hard at it. Ghanaians should be assured.
Okay. I had to leave you at this point because we understand how busy you are, but some of my people who are watching and listening are asking me to ask you to state, when can they say they live in a state of insecurity?
When it is impossible for you to go out of your home, to the market, to work, like when we are in a state that is declared as a state of insecurity by state actors. But for as long as we are able to wake up, we are doing what we have to do. For us, it is a record. For us as the police service, it is a record if no crime is reported. And that is what we aim at. And that is why we take measures to prevent the crime from happening.
People are concerned. People are concerned that these things, brazen criminal acts. I mean, who would think that anybody during the day in Sphincters, a busy place as Sphincters, Bachona, who would think that at a place like where this happened around Kolebu, a community where my colleague Evans Mensah has lived before and tells us of the state of the community. The roads are bad, you can't even drive through properly, and the people are such that when they arrest and apprehend someone who is conducting themselves criminally, they will lynch you immediately. That criminals will be bold enough to go into such a community and do what they did. And the concern is these things continue to happen. The police keep announcing a bounty on the head of the criminals, and we don't get any news that they have been arrested, they have been prosecuted, so they are with us. That's the concern.
It is a genuine concern, and we are also concerned. That is why we are taking all the actions necessary to arrest the criminals, because for as long as the criminals are not arrested, we can't rest. And so, but as we do that, we don't leave the rest of the picture. We do the work that we have to do to prevent the incidences from happening. And that is the assurance that we can give Ghanaians, that we are preventing the crimes from happening, even as we take steps to arrest these criminals. So it is a genuine concern, but be assured that we are doing everything we can within our constitutional mandate and everything we have to do, supported by other agencies, to arrest the perpetrators.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, and we wish you the very best as you continue in the journey and assisting to ensure that we are safe. Thank you very much. Sheila Kessie Abeye Bachman is the Director of Public Affairs of the Ghana Police Service. Let me bring in my other guest, Professor Kwesi Enin, who is Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Emmanuel Buka Bombande is UN Senior Mediation Advisor and former Deputy Minister, Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. Also joining these two is John Ewua, CEO, Ghana Association of Bankers. You know that the police have issued a sort of a directive to them that by the end of this month, they should ensure that they have bulletproof bullion vans rather than the farm trucks that they are using presently as bullion vans. Professor Kwesi Enin, if you can help us, first of all, to understand why the president, for example, and the police themselves, and there is this MP, and that really surprises me, but I need to understand. This police officer who is now an MP and whose husband during the campaign was killed by, was shot and killed. And now she is the deputy chair of the Interior and Defense Committee of Parliament. I've heard him, along the week defending the situation and saying that there's no insecurity. And I'm surprised that somebody whose husband was just killed in such a way, how many months ago, and because she's in Parliament, she's in government, she can't seem to see that anything is going on wrong.
Well, Samson, there's a long historicity to the discrepancy as to what security is, how it should be given to people, and how people should perceive it. So those of us who are at the receiving end of the service perceive the quality of security as a service differently from the professionals and the politicians whose duty and role it is to ensure that the service is provided in a manner that is effective, that does not sow fear, and that creates societies of stability where people can go about their business. This discrepancy that on the surface seems very simple actually encapsulates some of the unfortunate discrepancies inherent in Superintendent Abeye's submission earlier on about an almost dismissive approach to people's sense of insecurity. I think there is no doubt at all that people do feel insecure, because when you take up an arm or a gun against a representative of the state, then it means you've made a conscious choice also to stand and resist any response that would come thereof. So the public's response to all murders, all attacks will be one of fear, but particularly when an armed officer is then murdered in that manner, people feel a sense of fear. And I think to try to dismiss it does not capture the mood of society. And I think one of the ways, and actually today, Samson, my real dream today was to come with solutions. How do we move forward? One of the steps that I think the police can do is to learn about strategic communication. How do you communicate to a people who feel frightened, who feel let down, who feel hemmed in by people who are having guns and are using them indiscriminately? How do you use words of reassurance and to stretch out your hand in a manner that says, please help us. This is a collective challenge. We need a collective solution to the problems that we are facing. So I think the language and the choice of words coming from the service would need the support of a professional communicator to ensure, that they are couched in such a manner that it calms the public, it brings the public on board as collaborators, and as actually purveyors and providers of frontline intelligence, which become critical in the fight against the challenges that we see. My last point, Samson. The understanding of security and insecurity once more shows the split between the providers and the recipients. Okay, what is this security we are talking about? This beast that there's so much misunderstanding about. Who should provide it? And more importantly, how should it be provided in a manner that people feel it serves their interests? But I think the dichotomy between all of us in the studio now and our uniformed friends and the covert operatives is that there's a long history of suspicion and of antagonism. It is surprising to me that at the Otreko incident, Otreko is a place where on a daily basis, there is a police checkpoint that intimidates, that extorts, that abuses, passengers. For 15 years, I've always mentioned the behavior of officers between Senya Breku and Commander. Consistent behavior that does not help in supporting Mrs. Abeye's point about the police's need of support from the public. We need two things, Samson, that does not cost any money. One is attitudinal change from the police. The second, behavioral change. Change that creates a conducive environment for partnership, for engagement, for the sharing of information, and for seeing the provision of security as a shared responsibility. That will contribute immensely to creating societies that are safe, secure, and can go about their businesses.
I'll come to Dr. Bombande shortly, but Professor Kwesi, we have had let's go to the solutions quickly because, like you said, that should be our attitude now. The NCCE has just brought to the fore a research they have done in border towns and villages in the country, and it shows clearly the threat of violent extremism, and the respondent seems to show clearly that joblessness is the biggest threat. How much of this explains what is going on and what ought to be done.
Well,
Yes,
Samson, thank you very much. It's not just about joblessness that is the problem. It's also about the very nature of our borders, the porosity. It's about the role of itinerant preachers who then exploit some of the fundamental structural challenges that we have. So that though the joblessness is a problem, the joblessness in itself does not have agency to transform and translate into extremism. And then by extension, the violent part. Different people can become extreme in terms of their beliefs, but the transition from that extreme belief to now deciding to be violent is something else altogether. And I think when we talk about border towns, let me be specific here. From Hamle to Paga to Kusiga to Kulungugu, yes, the borders are there, but they are so porous that even a sieve is tight. We are not investing enough monies in those border communities to be able to create a sense of, safety. But more disturbingly, once more, is that the presence of border security agents are perceived by the communities as an imposition of traditional norms of doing business. So, for example, and this is, I spent months last year traveling around these border communities in all the 6 northern regions. There is a perception that official state representatives are an imposition, they are guests, and therefore they should not make the rules how people should live. So if you see the smuggling that goes out, either fertilizer, plastic goods, the theft of motorcycles, the cattle rustling, all those involved in gold mining, there is a community support and an infrastructure that allows these criminal networks to survive. The end result is that those who bring extremist ideologies almost have communities that are receptive to their presence, that are receptive to their narrative. So the joblessness is only one part of a very big picture that I think my name, Bombande, can speak to much more eloquently than I can. But this is a problem that we need to begin to look at much more carefully, the border towns and the way there's a certain lawlessness that makes it almost impossible for it to be controlled.
All right. Dr. Bombande, tell us how you see what is going on and what steps do you think are required immediately to stem this tide?
Thank you so much, my good friend and brother, Samson. My first observation is to congratulate you for all your awards. I'm particularly excited about the category of democracy and peace building, and I identify myself with you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And to Kweku in the studio and my colleague panelists. Let me say that Professor Eni has, in my view, clearly shown how we should go, and I'll follow in his direction, that we should be more forward-looking in terms of how can we respond to the crisis we have. But in order to do that, there are certain quick compliments I want to make to Professor Eni's submission. And I want to begin with a very simple understanding to complement Professor Eni of insecurity. What is it? It is simply the anxiety you experience when you feel vulnerable or when you are in a state of calling it you are insecure. Now, if you feel an anxiety or if you have an experience of an anxiety because you feel vulnerable, it begins with an individual experience. But then we collectively share our individual experiences, and insecurity then becomes collective. But it begins with the individual. So my first forward-looking point here is, it is very important for the Ghana Police Service to acknowledge and accept that there is insecurity in order to be able to then determine how we go forward. If we deny it, then we are actually creating the problem, or we are not going to be able to address the problem when we deny it. Towards the end of her interview, Mrs. Abayi Bachman was basically talking about, she said, when you cannot leave your house and when you feel besieged and state authority imposes restrictions, that is not insecurity, because that is what she tried to describe as insecurity. That is a state of emergency because the level of insecurity has developed into an unmanageable crisis. And when the crisis becomes unmanageable, intervention through martial law is then to restrict people. Now, we cannot take that state of emergency and describe it as insecurity. And so we need to make that distinguishing clarity. And quickly related to that is leadership means accepting responsibility, but the Ghana Police Service are not alone in this. So on one hand, they are in the front line, and they must accept the responsibility of leadership in how we are dealing with the environment of insecurity. And to that extent, therefore, there is an associated kind of connection. One of the reasons Ghanaians feel insecure is precisely because they are aware that the West Africa region is insecure with kidnappings and the type of atrocities of violent crime that you cannot describe. So when your leadership of the police hierarchy want you to look at what is happening in the region, they are increasing your sense of vulnerability. Because basically what they are communicating is, don't worry, we are doing better than the others. And what the Ghanaians are feeling is, but in the other countries, it's because the police was not able to respond. That's why we see what is happening there. By asking us to look at what is happening in the region, are you telling us that what is happening in the other countries is also coming to us? So you actually increase their insecurity when you constantly remind them of the fear and anxiety that is happening in West Africa. And that's not the way to go. And that is why communication, as Professor Ening put it, is very important in how you get the people of Ghana on your side. Then my third point on this then is, how does the police, as Mrs. Abayi Bachman requested, get the public to understand and support their operational duties, which is all what we must advocate for, which is all what we must like. My suggestion is you must carry the people along with you. And how you carry the people along with you, as Superintendent Abayi was talking about, it's not when you respond to the invitation of Samson and begin now to talk about the efforts that are being done. It's more than that. So very quickly, in less than 1 minute, then I'll go to my fourth point and try to wrap up on this. What prevents the police in terms of scenario thinking? That every Friday afternoon, our key media persons know that at police headquarters, there will be a 1 to 2 hour press conference for the media to interact with the police and educate the Ghanaian populace about what the police are doing on each of the issues that you enumerated at the beginning of the program, so that they can say, on the attack of the, I call them pickups, they are not Bullion vans, on the attack of that pickup in which the police officer was killed, young, very forward-looking young police officer who was killed. We have not yet been able to apprehend the culprits, but our investigations are leading us to a point in which we are confident that very soon we would apprehend them. Just one sentence, and the media says this is what the police are saying on that incident. Then on the other they give an update. When you do that, you are assuring the public and you are carrying the people with you. But when the people don't hear you, they don't hear your updates. But once in a while, when you engage with the media, you then say, be assured, we are following and we're investigating. It does not help. And so that is part of the strategy of communication that Professor Eni talked about that I would add. Now, my fourth point, in order to take this forward, Professor Eni talked about those who provide the security and the recipients. At the two levels that are mutually reinforcing, I'll frame it another way. Now, the conversation we are having now are the operational levels of how we prevent violent crime and deal with violent crime. But all that is happening in an environment that is systemic and structural. The question is, how did we get to where we are today? Why has there been this sudden surge of the incidences that you enumerated? And it is not the number that counts, but it is the level of atrocity, impunity, and brazen daylight robbery, including taking lives, that accentuates the insecurity in terms of the experiences of people's anxiety. So that if in half of 2021, we might not be counting a huge number, but the numbers that you enumerated, the incidences are such that the public is paralyzed by the enormity of the violence, then you can understand the apprehension in the populace that they feel truly insecure. And how do we deal with that? A system thinking brings us to appreciate the interconnection of the whole of government machinery and the population at large.
All right.
And what I mean by that, okay, I'll be able to come back.
Right.
But very quickly, if Ghana Immigration Service is not able to contain or patrol the proliferation of small arms that are illegal and come across the borders as they do in their huge numbers. And Professor Eni talked about his own research looking at what is happening in our border communities. It doesn't matter how efficient the Ghana Police Service is, violent crime would increase because the Ghana Police, as an agency of the state, is not the same agency that must ensure that arms are not proliferating. So that customs, Ghana Immigration, and the associated agencies who must ensure that our environment is safe because illegal weapons are not proliferating must be able to be functional and efficient and effective. Okay. And obviously, finally, the environment. Right. And very quickly, in less than 1 minute, I'll wrap this up. The get-rich syndrome, in which 25-year-olds want to be very wealthy and they don't care how. And so they will kill, they will rob. Ritual killings, which is associated with the get-rich syndrome. The incapacity to see ourselves as a Ghanaian community that has humanity as at the center. That even in some extended families, people are prepared to sell their own. Where has society gone? And so when Professor Eni is talking about the new urgent change of behavior and attitude, you begin to see that we need a medium to long-term, very integrated approach to how we bring that about, whilst all that supports the operational duties of the police. I'll leave it here, and when I get the opportunity, I can expand further. All
right. Let me get to John Ewua, CEO of the Association of Bankers, to quickly look at the specific issue of how they are going to move forward. And then when I return, Professor Eni and Dr. Bombande, you should help us with, you spoke about proliferation of arms. And we have heard that, for example, in 2014 or so, we got the statistics from the Small Arms Commission. We don't know what the statistics are now. We're told that we had as many as 2.3 million firearms in private hands in Ghana. And out of this 2.3 million arms, that is in private hands, as much as 47% was unaccounted for. And even for the 53% that the police had registered, they don't monitor to enforce compliance of the conditions for registration. And there were linkages to rise in violent crime, gun violence, so that in 2017, there was an increase of about 27% in gun-related crime. So give us some of the statistics and tell us how we can resolve that. But first, let me get John Ewua specifically on this issue. How are you going to go about the resolution? The IGP is seeking to fast-track an agreement that you had with them to get bulletproof or the proper, gear. We are told that you are not too excited about it because there was a timeline to phase out this farm trucks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Samson, and thank you all, to the other participants as well. First, I would like to use the opportunity to send our thoughts and prayers to the family of the police officer who lost his life tragically last Monday, and to the lady who incidentally also lost her life as a result of the robbery. As a banking institution or as an industry, we are very concerned about the spate of robberies, particularly targeting banking infrastructure in the country. And yes, historically, police service have always been our number one stakeholder in management of particularly our cash operations and protection of banking facilities. So that relationship on an ongoing basis is always being reviewed. And just to cast my mind back a little, in response to the rising security risk, particularly with the targeting of banks, somewhere last year, middle of last year, we started stakeholder engagement. We had the discussions with the National Security Minister and his team. The governor himself also convened, I believe, 2 or 3 meetings with the MDs of all the banks. In those meetings, we assessed the situation and devised other ways of mitigating the risk that the industry is confronted with. Of course, we do not have the expertise in the security side, and that is why that side is outsourced to the police who provide and assist us. We also made the IGP and his team also trying to understand exactly what we can do a lot more to improve the security situations. Of course, when we have attacks such as what we just recorded last Monday and the near miss about 2 days ago, it heightens the security threat that our customers go through. And as banks, we operate in an environment of confidence. And when confidence is lost or waned because of a threat of robbers, banking operations can grind gradually to a minimum level or to a halt. And that is why we work very closely with the security apparatus to at least always be upfront with the security threat that we are exposed to and devise ways of mitigating our risk. As you alluded to, we had a plan with the regulator and the Bank of Ghana to phase out the sub-body bullion vans that we have in the system. And here, let me just correct an anomaly that commentators on this matter sometimes make. Cash operations in the country, actually, much as it's a banking activity, is largely outsourced. So when you say purchase of bullion vans, technically, it's not the banks that are going to purchase the bullion vans, because the bucket, the soft body vans that you see around do not belong to the banks. We use third-party cash in transit operators. These are companies that are registered and licensed to conduct the business of assisting the banking industry and other sectors in the movement of specie. So it is not like banks have had to invest in bullion, armored bullions, and we have not. There is a whole business infrastructure or sector that is tasked with the duty of cash operations, moving cash from point A to point B, and it is they are actually the target of that investment. What we can do as an industry is to facilitate and provide the funding that is needed to enable them procure the right equipment to ensure that the business of banking is conducted in a safe and sound manner. To that extent, we are largely in sync with the IGP. Yes, the timeline is very tight, and given the number of armored vans we have in the system, vis-a-vis the volume of cash that we have to move on a daily basis, operationally, it will be a challenge. But as banks, that is why we are there. We need to go sit back and see under the circumstance what is possible. So in a nutshell, I would say that as banks, we are deeply worried when such incidents of security breaches are recorded. And as they happen, we liaise with the banking regulator and also with the police service. We are part of the investigative mechanism that is set up, and then we try to uncover what went wrong and what we could do better. I think the point has been made that much as, yes, the police officer was in a soft body van, but perhaps if he was in the right apparatus, the injury could have, or the loss could have been prevented.
Because he needed, I've heard some say he needed a helmet, the proper one, and he would have been saved, because it does appear from how he was shot, if he had something wearing, that could have helped.
Yeah, I'm not an expert, security expert in that area, but of course, if you have, as soldiers go to war and we watch on TV and in movies, we see them in helmets and in vests. Obviously, I'm sure it's to protect them from harm. So if police officers on board our vans or Bullion vans, even if the vans are armored, they will still have to be in protective gear. So that is the area that we as banks will be working very closely with the police service to see what we can also do to support in that area to ensure that the business of banking does not also grind to a halt because you have recorded an incident.
Okay. So as we understand, you are in sync with the order from the IGP, even though it is too short, because that's just end of this month. And you are setting that you would have a resolution and move forward from there. So there are no problems.
There are problems. As I speak with you, throughout the week, there's been significant amount of discussions, back and forth meetings, back and forth, trying to understand how operationally we can bring the directive into action. So those discussions are ongoing, and that is why I would say, of course, the service level may have to come down in terms of cash operation level if we have to go by that directive. So as an industry, we are not taking lightly the incidents that happened, but operationally, there are constraints that practically we have to also be mindful of.
Okay. All right. John, we're CEO of the Ghana Association of Bankers. Thank you very much for your time. And we wish you all the best as you try to work with the police to resolve this and to save the lives of police officers. Well, Kuku, let's have your take on all of these things happening, from the question of the type of Bullion vans and the directives that have come in, and the general question of security and the brazen nature of the criminal conduct that we are seeing daylight.
It would be naive on my part to suggest there are no Ghanaians, individual citizens of this land, who might feel insecure relative to certain incidents of violence, especially robbery, that has taken place in recent times, or even in the past. It's natural that any citizen who becomes a victim of incidents of violence or armed robbery or robbery will feel insecure as a person, and indeed can transmit it to his community or family members. So really, I'm not about to suggest that there are no people in this country who don't feel insecure or who are not concerned about some of these incidents. What I'm not too sure about is whether you can move from this correct premise and generalize it to suggest there is a state of national insecurity. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, and it's not a factual picture. That's my view. But you see, the police service and other security agencies are working to cure this mischief because they realize that it has an impact on people's sense of security as well as even the economic development of this country. And I have to be very honest that this is not the first time this country has been challenged or confronted with this phenomenon. And each time, the various administrations that have come and gone, including the police administration itself, regardless of the leadership, they've all recognized these things. Look, if you go back, I have this report here, dated March 1997, is the Justice Archer report, some to put it short, otherwise it's report of the Presidential Commission into the Ghana Police Service, the Executive Summary, Part 1 and Part 2. It was in recognition of the state of the Ghana Police. Not just morale, but equipment, the training, the facility, the recruitment and all that. Beyond this book, Ghana Police Service Transformation Program,
the transformation
2017
agenda.
to 2022, and former IGP Apietu. Even though, strictly speaking, if you read this book carefully, there had been a strategic plan 2010 to 2015 earlier. So they incorporated those parts into this new document. And something each one of these documents here, then of course you can add this national security policy strategy. It's a clear recognition of authorities in this country, law enforcement authorities, political leadership, security leadership, that we have a problem. So it is not as if, because all of us feel, not everybody feels insecure, it means there is no problem. There is a challenge for law enforcement and security management of this country. And I believe, if we have to be honest, is that all these things, in terms, if you read all, you see that we know what to do. It is how to do it. The commitment that we must show to operationalize these fine documents. And I have to be honest, they've done so. You were talking with the woman, the lady, I'm sorry, the name escapes me. Sheila, about ammo, the bulletproof vest. She was right when she said that they don't have enough for everybody. And it's not everybody at every time that needs that.
That's right. That's right.
If you read this Appeal 2 document, if I may call it so, 2019 results here, they bought 4,500 level, and I don't understand, I'm sure Professor Kwesini will explain, or Bombardi will explain, 400 body armor vests were bought. It's insufficient, in my candid opinion, but it's a recognition of the fact that there is the need for such resources to be brought on board. So they bought it. They bought 2,000 ballistic helmets. They bought 250 body cameras. They established an establishment of motorbike patrol unit to fight armed robberies and those things. In fact, it was on a pilot basis in Accra, Tamale, and Kumasi. I'm told now it is moved from pilot to functional. Then the training of 15,000 community protection agents. All this may be insufficient, including vehicles and things. But it's a recognition that, look, we need to fight crime, we need to enforce law, but you can do it with the equipment and the training of the personnel. In fact, I think in terms of personnel, we are still short of the UN standard. We're supposed to be looking for 1 to 500, but we are around 1 to 800 or so. So in my view, it is not very fair sometimes to create the impression that the police are doing nothing at all. I think they are doing a lot within the constraints of limited resources. And it's better to encourage them than, to subject them to some of the analysis that sometimes come out that creates the impression as if nothing at all is being done. Okay. That is, look, there's now a police intelligence directorate. When the BNI special branch were separated, it created a little problem for a while. You need intelligence-led policing. Many of these things going on. If police intelligence were up to date, in terms of the equipment and things, I believe the fight against crime will be easier.
All right.
Okay? We now have a police forensic laboratory, don't we? We've had that for about five or 6 years, perhaps even more. This shows that, look, we are beginning to think that technology must aid the fight against crime. Some of these things that have happened with CCTV, of course, some were privately owned, but also state-owned CCTV have come on board to identify some of those criminal elements. At least it gives you a picture of where to trail them. So I don't think it's a zero option.
All right.
That as a nation we're having. But I'm okay with those who think that, look, let's do more in terms of personnel recruitment, in terms of training, in terms of reorientation, and there's a little bit of corruption too in the system.
All right.
Okay, if you go to the small arms place, how do the arms come in?
Yeah.
We have this commission on small arms, all that. They're doing everything possible. But see, some of our immigration elements, border patrol elements, are part and parcel of the problem.
Koku, it's very easy to get to procure arms in Ghana.
Yes, it's part of the problem.
If you are looking for a pistol, it's very, very easy.
It's part of the problem.
And go check. If you hear some of the experts talk about it, people don't trust it. But it is police officers who lead people to get the arms.
Yes, it's true.
Okay? And some of us, we are talking from experience, that we have experienced some of these things. And I had this, client who needed to surrender his gun because he's not a Ghanaian. He came into the country, stayed and finished. He was leaving, and he had registered a gun. He said, I want to surrender it. Now, you're going to check through the process, and the police who are supposed to assist the surrendering process are suggesting to you who is ready to buy it.
Yeah. I hear you. And it's part of the problem. The corruption of the system itself is part of the problem.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll return and then we'll bring the experts back to give us their final views on the solutions. And for the banks too, I will share a reasoned view, expert view from Kweku Entwibwe-Siakon on how you can avoid all of this with dealing with your cash. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis platform. Is brought to you by Bank of Africa. As strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. DBS Industries, that's your roof masters. Robert & Sons, seeing is believing. Way Lead, home is where you start from, so get a good home. Star Assurance, your solid partner. First Code Management Services, that's industry, get it right. The New School, knowledge, compassion, and leadership. And my outfit is by Habil's Coterra, and you can call them 0200 84 1988. They are at Ajiringano, and will make you look good. All right. Now, Dr. Enning and Dr. Professor Enning and Dr. Bombande, we have a very limited time to go, but let's try it this way. In 2 minutes, Professor Enning, how will you deal with the questions of terrorist acts in our neighboring countries and how it may influence what is happening here? The Nigerian jailbreakers, we understand, could also be an issue. So how do you look at all of that and the proliferation of the arms situation? Hello? Okay, Professor Enning, let's get Dr. Bombande quickly. You say this is a crisis. So I'm thinking about it in the area of proliferation of arms, because it is the arms that embolden them to do the things the way they are doing. What can we do about that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Samson. Let me take just a quick step back to clarify. From our earlier conversation, when Kweku Bako talks about national insecurity, it conveys a totally different meaning. So our conversation is not suggesting that there is national insecurity, because national insecurity is on the borderline of an emergency because of the nature of the widespread and the threat to civilian lives. What we are talking about is the state in which there is a surge in the incidences of violent crime that has accentuated insecurity. And to that extent, to acknowledge it in order to address it. And this is different from national insecurity. And I want to be clear that none of us talked about national insecurity. And moving on to that, to respond to your question, I started talking about the underlying systemic issues that we must address in order to deal better with the operational. And I want to borrow from your earlier discussion. You and Kweku Bako and Dr. Amoako Hini agreed that you cannot effectively respond to the pandemic in terms of vaccine infrastructure and distribution without the consensus of thought and thinking that includes political consensus. I'll borrow that and bring it into this same discussion. And what it means is, number one, in order to be effective in dealing with the proliferation of small arms, we are better off when we tackle that problem at a decentralized level. But that will mean, and you gave an example of the municipal chief executive who ended up also being part of a victim. But you see, psychologically, the DCEs and the MCEs see central government to be largely responsible for security. Okay. Though we all know that they are the heads of the district and municipal security councils.
Right.
So if I take it from there, we must reach consensus on how to elect our DCEs and MCEs and clarify their roles in Thank
you very much, Dr. Bombande. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Professor Kwesienin, I have your attention now on the armed situation which emboldens these criminals. In 1 minute, how do we deal with that?
Well, I think how we deal with it is to go back to the original cabinet letter that argued for the establishment of a regulatory body. That regulatory body must be independent of government, which should be the Ghana National Commission on Small Arms. Unfortunately, what we have is an emasculated institution that doesn't have the capacity to deliver on the small arms issue. Until we go back to the drawing board, authorizing and empowering the commission to do the work that it was established to do, we will have this problem of a politicized problem of arms acquisition, of licensing regime, and of course of import and exports. We need to change that so that the National Commission becomes the lead agency. Final point, you may have all the grand strategic documents relating to the Ghana Police Service. If you take the last strategic document, only 1 point out of the 13, the reconciling of.
All right. Unfortunately, the lines are getting terrible there for us. But thank you all so very much, Professor Kwesienin, Dr. Emmanuel Bombande, Kweku Bako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Thank you so very much. I said I was going to share something for the bankers, but we'll try and publish it so that you see Kweku Nchubu Esiakon's way of what he calls the DigiCD, safe and secure mobile money transactions and cashless economy, so that you have what you call DigiCD, paperless, coinless, in the form of existing legal tender that avoids the situation that we have now. Thank you also very much. I'm Samson Ladia Yenene. God willing, we'll come your way next week with another edition of Newsfile.